Apple just paid Google $1 billion, not for advertising, not for search, for the brain inside your iPhone. $1 billion per year so that Google's artificial intelligence, a model with 1.2 trillion parameters, can power the device Apple told you was the most private on Earth. This is the most contradictory deal in the history of technology. And it happened today at WWDC 2026. But to understand why Apple just handed Google the keys to 700 million iPhones, you need to understand a 10-year lie, a lie Apple put on every billboard in America. In 2014, Apple launched one of the most effective marketing campaigns in the history of technology. 4 words. Privacy. That is iPhone. The message was everywhere. Billboards on every highway. Television ads during the Super Bowl. Full-page advertisements in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. And the villain in Apple's story was always the same company. Google. The company that reads your email. The company that tracks every website you visit. The company that builds profiles of everything you do and sells access to advertisers. Apple told you that Google was the enemy, and you believed them. Millions of people chose iPhones specifically because they trusted Apple to protect them from Google. That was the promise. Here is the reality. Today, in 2026, Google's most powerful artificial intelligence runs inside every single iPhone on the planet. In January 2026, Apple signed a contract with Google worth approximately $1 billion per year. Under this deal, a custom version of Google's Gemini model with 1.2 trillion parameters is integrated directly into Apple Intelligence. Not as an app you download, not as an option you choose, as a foundational component of the operating system itself. When you ask Siri a complex question, Gemini processes it. When Apple Intelligence summarizes your email, Gemini analyzes it. When writing tools help you draft a message, Gemini may be generating the words. Your query, your personal words, your private context, your sensitive question, flows through Google's technology. 1.2 trillion parameters. Let me show you what that number actually means. If you wrote each parameter on a single grain of rice, you would need enough rice to fill 12,000 Olympic swimming pools. That is the scale of the Google model running inside your phone right now. And Apple paid $1 billion a year for it because they had to. Here is the part Apple will never say out loud at WWDC. Apple Intelligence was a catastrophic failure. In 2024, Apple launched it with enormous promises. On-device AI. Privacy first. Smart enough to compete with ChatGPT. The reality was embarrassing. Notification summaries got facts wrong. Writing tools produced generic text. Features kept getting delayed for months. And in early 2026, Apple paid $250 million, $250 million, to settle legal claims that they had overpromised on AI capabilities. $250 million in settlements. $1 billion per year to Google. That is $1.25 billion Apple has spent because their own AI failed. And that number is just the beginning. Apple reportedly partnered with Nvidia to use specialized encrypted chips that keep your data secure during AI processing. Confidential computing, they call it. Your query is encrypted when it leaves your phone. It stays encrypted while Gemini processes it. And the response is encrypted on its way back. Even Google cannot see the actual content Apple claims. But here is the question nobody at WWDC will answer. If Google's model is processing your data, even encrypted data, who is really in control? The company that makes the phone? Or the company whose brain runs inside it? This is not the first time Apple paid Google for access to your iPhone, and the pattern tells you everything. Since 2014, Apple has paid Google approximately $20 billion per year to make Google the default search engine in Safari. $20 billion. Every year. That deal means every time you open Safari and type a search, your query goes to Google. Apple collects a check. Google collects your data. Now add the Gemini deal on top. $1 billion more per year. Google's search engine handles what you look for. Google's AI handles what you think about. 2 revenue streams flowing from Apple to Google. 2 data pipelines flowing from your iPhone to Google's servers. Apple positioned itself as the anti-Google for a decade. In reality, Apple is Google's most valuable distribution partner. Apple sends Google more user data than any other company on Earth. And Apple gets paid handsomely for doing it. So let me answer the question this documentary is really about. Who controls the iPhone now? Apple controls the hardware, the screen, the chip, the camera, the battery. Apple controls the interface. What you see when you pick up your phone, Apple controls the brand, the logo, the marketing, the mystique. But Google controls the intelligence, the search results, the AI responses, the analytical capability that makes the phone actually useful in 2026. Without Google, Siri is a timer and a weather app. With Google, Siri is a conversational AI that can analyze your email, summarize your documents, and plan your day. Apple is becoming a luxury shell around Google's brain. The hardware is beautiful. The software is polished. But the thinking, the actual intelligence, is outsourced to the company Apple spent a decade calling the villain. And this creates a dependency that Apple cannot easily escape. If Google raises the price of Gemini next year, Apple pays. If Google decides to limit certain Gemini capabilities to its own Pixel phones first, Apple waits. If Google develops a breakthrough feature and offers it to Samsung before Apple, Apple loses competitive advantage. Apple has always controlled its supply chain with ruthless precision. Every chip, every screen, every component manufactured to Apple's exact specifications. But they cannot manufacture intelligence. They cannot build a 1.2 trillion parameter model overnight. And that gives Google leverage that no other Apple supplier has ever had. Today at WWDC, Apple presented the new Siri, the new iOS 27, and the new AI features with excitement and optimism. They used the slogan, "All systems glow." The audience applauded. The tech press wrote glowing previews. But behind the glow, there is a billion-dollar check written to the company Apple told you was the enemy. Behind the new Siri, there is Google's brain. Behind the privacy promise, there is an asterisk that says, your data may be processed on external servers. Apple just paid Google $1 billion to replace the brain inside your iPhone. They call it innovation. I call it what it is, surrender. Tomorrow on Tech Documentary HQ, we break down everything WWDC announced and what it actually means for your daily life. Thursday on NexusPoint_EN, we follow the hidden infrastructure pipeline from your iPhone to Google's servers.